Heads up, because you're the Hoodwood. I'm the White Bandit KJ Green, welcoming you to Sports from the Hoodwood for October 11th, 2019. Coming up this week, League Championship Previews. We're down to 4 in MLB, who I think will move on to the World Series. Hero Ball in the NBA. Will it further eradicate team play? Our NFL Week 6 Preview, along with the Hoodwood Hot 5. All that, that, head slap, and as many takes as legally allowed in under an hour. All coming at you this week in Sports from the Hoodwood. Are you ready? Then let's go.
You're tuned in to Sports from the Hoodwood. We internet's foremost location for the most honest, unfiltered commentary and insight on the world of sports. Now, once again, here's Hoodwood's hometown hero, KJ Green.
Greetings from the Hoodwood, where the mountains have suddenly started calling, and I must go. I'm going to take a weekend off and go to the mountains. Not take a week off, but just a couple of days. Kind of get myself decompressed, hang out, and just enjoy the mountain foliage and scenery. But before I do that, we got a week's worth of sports to get to, and let's get to them by looking at the League Championship Series. 3 of the 4 teams are decided already. Sadly, my Twins got swept out. The first team to have won over 100 games and get swept in the first round. The Yankees hitting and pitching was just too much for them, and the Twins just succumb weakly, and they're now under a 16-game losing streak in the postseason. It's getting kind of bad. I'm hoping that the Twins can get back to the playoffs next year and get a little deeper. But the other 3 League Championship Series have been absolute gems. The Cards and the Braves going 5 games with a deciding game, 5th game in Atlanta. But what you thought might have been a 5th game full of drama and great plays and tension dissolved in the very first inning. I mean, the Cardinals just obliterated the Braves. And the worst thing about it was in Atlanta. So the fans barely were even seated in their where they're at. They're barely seated. And the Cardinals are ripping off runs left and right. They wasted 0 time in running the Braves out of the playoffs, scoring a mind-boggling and NLCS record 10 runs in the first inning. Now remember, the game was in Atlanta, so the Cardinals were batting first and doing a virtual conga line around the bases, making a mockery of this Game 5. But the nightcap made up for it. Boy, that was some game. The Dodgers felt good about putting young Walker Buehler on the mound for a deciding Game 5. And by and large, in Game 5, he shined, pitching 6 2/3 strong innings and left the game with the lead. The Dodgers jumped on the Nats very early and had a 3-1 lead in the 7th inning. Manager Dave Roberts decided to go with the star-crossed Clayton Kershaw. Now, Clayton Kershaw had lost Game 4 and was coming in off a short rest for Game 5. After getting the final out in the 7th inning, Dave Roberts rolled the dice and brought Kershaw back out for a 2nd inning of work. It did not go well. Back-to-back home runs by Anthony Rendon and Juan Soto tied the game. Back-to-back pitches to Rendon and Soto tied the game. Clayton Kershaw had thrown close to 35,000 pitches in his major league career and had never given up back-to-back pitches for back-to-back home runs. When he gave up the home run to Soto, a long, towering blast that went 449 feet, Kershaw squatted near to the mound in obvious anguish. His playoff jinx continues. Now, you give big ups to Clayton Kershaw after the game. He stood in front of the reporters, answered all their questions, and took responsibility. But the game was only tied. Dave Roberts, again, misusing his bullpen in the 9th and 10th inning. Will Smith nearly sent the Dodgers to the LCS with a long drive to right field, but it was pulled in at the track. 3-3 game going into the 10th inning. Joe Kelly of the Dodgers in his second inning of relief. My question was, what was Dave Roberts thinking in that 5th game, leaving Kershaw in to give up those back-to-back home runs? Honestly, he could have went to Kenta Maeda, who had been a go-to in the middle and late innings to set up Kenley Jansen, the closer. He could have went to Pedro Baez. Right-handers could not hit Baez. They had 172 against them all season. He could have at least went to Adam Kolarek, who specifically was getting Juan Soto out. He left Clayton Kershaw in for reasons he still hasn't explained, other than saying he felt good about Clayton right there. And it was just a mistake for Roberts in a do-or-die Game 5 situation not to go all hands on deck. Clayton Kershaw got the out that he needed in the top of the 7th, but it should have been just that, nothing else. He should have went to Maeda. He should have went to Baez. He should have went, if anything, nursed every pitcher out there. He could have went to Kolarek. He could have went to May. He could have went to Kelly. But he left Kershaw in there. Kershaw tied the game. Joe Kelly in there, pitching 2 innings. And in his second inning of relief, the Nats loaded the bases. And when the Nats loaded the bases, up stepped Howie Kendrick. Now, Howie Kendrick had had a star-crossed series, numerous fielding errors, a couple of running blunders, but he was a vet. And in that situation, you want a vet up there. What did Howie Kendrick did? What did Howie Kendrick do? What did Howie Kendrick do? Slammed an 0-1 pitch, dead center field. 55,000 in Dodger Stadium went morbidly quiet as Kendrick knew he got it and got it all. The grand slam, probably one of the most devastating since Buster Posey hit a grand slam in Cincinnati to beat the Reds in Game 5 of the 2012 LDS, gave the Nats a 7-3 lead. The Dodgers went quietly in the 10th, so it's the franchise second playoff victory ever in franchise history and their first in Washington. Now, for a fan base that has grown accustomed to meltdowns, this is a sweet sleigh ride. Rallying to get the wild card, the top wild card. Beating the Brewers after being down 3-1. Rallying to beat the 106-win Dodgers after being down 2-1 in games and facing elimination both times. Now, in the ALDS, of course, you have the Rays and the Astros who are battling again in a Game 5. But after winning the first 2 games, the Astros looked like they were going to be on their way to a sweep. But Zach Greinke struggled in Game 3. A.J. Hinch gambled on bringing Justin Verlander out on short rest. He was ineffective. Now the Astros are hoping that Garrett Cole can be the stopper and get the Astros back to the LCS. Now, of course, this plays directly into the Yankees' hands because they've been sitting and resting since sweeping the Twins on Monday. I have the Astros winning in 7. Now, switching back to the NL, let's look at how the Nats weren't even close to really being here at one time. They were 19-31 at one point. But then they recovered and went a crisp 74-38 over the back 2/3 of the schedule. A franchise that has been seemingly star-crossed since their days in Montreal. From the 81 5-game loss to the Dodgers, how ironic was that? To the 94 Expos team that was cruelly denied a shot at the postseason and probably one of the best teams in franchise history. To the 2012 Nats team that could not hang on to a 2-run lead in the top of the 9th and gave up 4 runs when they were 1 out away from moving on to the league championship series. And they did that in Washington. The Nationals became the first team in Major League history to rally from 3 or more runs down twice in elimination games during the postseason. The Nationals are going to be a hard team to deal with. The League Championship Series, the National League Championship Series, I should say, the National League Championship Series between the Nats and the St. Louis Cardinals starts Friday in St. Louis. And the ALCS will start Saturday night in Houston. We will take our first time out of the day, come back. Sports from the Hoodwood continues after this.
You're tuned into Sports from the Hoodwood, the internet's foremost location for no-nonsense commentary, insight, and opinions on the world of sports. Here now live in living color, black by popular demand, your host, KJ Green.
You are back in the Hoodwood, and we will now move to week 6 of the NFL. And what can I say is this was just another mediocre week. Winning one, barely. Should have known better than to trust the Bengals or the Chargers or the Jags. The latter two just flat let me down. But I have a steely resolve to do better, and I will do better. I present for your review, perusal, and approval the picks for week 6. The odds provided by ESPN are for your entertainment and comparison purposes only. If you bet these lines and lose, I'm not the person you need to ask to pay your bookie. Money is just a rumor in my wallet. The bye weeks this week are Oakland and Chicago, both of which played each other in England last week. Raiders defeating the Bears 24-21. They are both 3-2. The 3-2 Colts are off this week after defeating the Chiefs 19-13 on Sunday night. And the Buffalo Bills, who are 4-1 after defeating the Titans 14-7. Let's get into week 6. Thursday night game, October 10th, the 2-3 Giants are at the 5-0 Patriots. Game being played at Gillette Stadium in Foxborough, Mass. 8:20. Games on Fox and NFL Network. The Patriots are 17-point favorites. Last week, New England defeated Washington 33-7, while New York lost to Minnesota 28-10. Fast fact, Patriots have scored as many touchdowns on defense as they have allowed. 2 each. Now, the Giants are suffering through the growing pains of Daniel Jones, and without Saquon Barkley to lean on, his education is steep and painful, as they took an awful beating from the Vikings. Meanwhile, the Pats looked almost bored in our nation's capital and won handily. The Pats are too dominant, and forcing the G-men to hang with them is a task in itself. To ask them to do so on a short week, on the road, yeah, you don't think the Giants have a snowball's chance under a heat lamp. This won't be the lock, since I have been going to the Pats too often for the too easy games, but the Pats will still win handily. The pick here is New England. Let's move to the Sunday game, Sunday, October 13th. We will lead off with the early game, the game in London, England. 3-2 Panthers taking on the 2-3 Bucks at Tottenham Hotspur Stadium in London, England. 9:30 a.m. kickoff on the NFL Network. The Panthers are 2-point favorites. Last week, the Panthers defeated the Jaguars 34-27, while the Buccaneers lost to the Saints 31-24. Fast fact, despite averaging 36 points a game, In their last 3, the Bucs are 1-2 over that span. A morning game for a pair of East Coast teams leads off the week. The Panthers outgunned the Jags last week, and Kyle Allen is fast making a case to keep the starting job. Now they face the wildly uneven Bucs, who are showing offensive prowess, but their defense is still very porous. Now I don't trust either team wholly, but I do trust the rugged running of Christian McCaffrey, and that Kyle Allen is playing well enough to keep this game from turning into a shootout. The pick here is Carolina. Next up, we have the 4-1 Seahawks at the 2-3 Browns. Game being played at First Energy Stadium in Cleveland. 1 o'clock kickoff on Fox. The Seahawks are 1-point favorites. Last week, the Seahawks defeated the Rams 30-28, while the Browns lost to the 49ers 31-3. Fast fact, Browns quarterback Baker Mayfield has the lowest quarterback rating of any regular NFL starting quarterback at 68.5. Now, the Seahawks have had a long week to prepare for the Browns, having played last Thursday, while the hosts are coming in off of a short week on the road and an embarrassing effort on national TV again. Now, normally I'd say a West Coast team coming east for an early game is dead meat. But I think the Seahawks coming in rested from the long week off, and the Browns on a short turnaround also coming from the West Coast, works in the visitors' favor. I'm sorry, folks. I'm still not sold on the Browns being any more than a mediocre team. The pick here is Seattle. Next up, we have the 3-2 Texans at the 4-1 Chiefs. Game being played at Arrowhead Stadium in Kansas City, 1 o'clock kickoff on CBS. The Chiefs are 5.5-point favorites. Last week, the Texans defeated the Falcons 53-32, while the Chiefs lost to the Colts 19-13. Fast fact, Texans quarterback Deshaun Watson became the first player in NFL history to throw for at least 400 yards. He threw for 426 and 5 touchdowns with 5 or fewer incompletions. He had 5 exactly. The yardage and the TDs were both career bests for Watson. Wait a minute. Suddenly the Texans have an offense? They went from struggling to score against the Panthers to lighting up the scoreboard at home against the Falcons. Now, Deshaun Watson hopes he can continue his offensive brilliance against a Chiefs team that has suddenly struggled to find its identity. Most folks were stunned when the Chiefs took an unexpected loss at home last week against the Colts, but I can't see them taking 2 losses at home in a row. The pick here is Kansas City. Next up, we have 0-4 Miami at 0-5 Washington at FedEx Field in Landover, Maryland. 1 o'clock kickoff on Fox. Washington is 3.5-point favorites. Last week, Washington lost to New England 33-7, while Miami was on their bye. Fast fact, the Dolphins have scored 26 points total in 4 games. Over the past 5 weeks, teams have scored 26 points or more in a single game 62 times. 12 of those times have been in losses. Even Washington has done it once. They scored 27 points in their opening week loss in Philly. That wretched smell coming from the nation's capital isn't political, at least not in this instance. It's a combined stank of the so-called football teams. Washington gave Jay Gruden the gate on Monday, firing him at 5 a.m. on Monday, and hand the reins to longtime veteran coach Bill Callahan. Now, they face a Dolphins team that managed to get beat on their bye. Now, seriously, both teams are just horrid, and they lack the keys and capital to make wholesale changes overnight. Miami has no offense to speak of, and while Washington is going through convulsions or conniptions to determine who their quarterback is, they at least have a decent offense, and that should be enough to carry the day. The pick here is Washington. Next up, we have the 3-2 Eagles at the 3-2 Vikings, game being played at US Bank Stadium in Minneapolis. 1 o'clock kickoff on Fox. The Vikings are 3-point favorites. Last week, the Eagles defeated the Jets 31-6, while the Vikings defeated the Giants 28-10. Fast fact, the Eagles are allowing 63 yards rushing per game, best in the NFL. Now, both teams are coming in off of solid thrashings of the respective New York teams. Philly's offense has come together nicely in back-to-back wins, while the up-and-down Vikings offense ticked up with a solid performance on the road in Gotham. Now, this is a who's going to show up for the Vikings. On paper, the Vikings should have enough to beat the Eagles. Their running game is one of the best in the NFL, and their defense plays tough. But it's the scattered, inconsistent play of Kirk Cousins that is what's hampering them. The Eagles are starting to look like the playoff team of years past, and that might be a problem for Cousins and the Vikings offense. I'm going to gamble that being at home will be just enough difference to get a hard-fought win. The pick here is the Minnesota Vikings. Next up, we have the 4-1 Saints at the 2-3 Jaguars. Game being played at TIAA Bank Field in Jacksonville. 1 o'clock kickoff on Fox. The Jags are 1-point favorites. Last week, the Saints defeated the Buccaneers 31-24, while the Jags lost to the Panthers 34-27. Fast fact, the Jags have only 2 takeaways so far this season. The Saints proved that they can win games with their offense as Teddy Bridgewater shined against the Bucs. Now, they faced the Jags, who lost a shootout in Charlotte last week. Now, it's hard to determine which team on both sides will show up. And as much as I'm trying to get on the Gardner Minshew hype train, the Jags are too undisciplined at times to be consistent winners. I think that the Saints will have enough to grind out a road win. The pick here is New Orleans. We'll take a timeout, come back with the rest of the early games, the late games, and the Sunday and Monday night games, the NFL Week 6 picks. Sports from the Hoodwood continues after this.
You're tuned in to Sports from the Hoodwood, the internet's premier location for no-nonsense commentary, insight, and opinions on the world of sports. Here now, the man with 100% certified fresh takes, your host, KJ Green.
While we go with the NFL Week 6 picks in Hoodwood, the final 1 o'clock game of the docket is the 0-5 Bengals at the 3-2 Ravens. Game being played at M&T Bank Stadium in Baltimore. 1 o'clock kickoff on CBS. The Ravens are 11.5-point favorites. Last week, the Bengals lost to the Cardinals 26-23, while the Ravens defeated the Steelers, also by the score 26-23, in overtime. Fast fact, it's a bad omen for the visitors. Baltimore is second in the NFL with 192.2 rushing yards a game. The Bengals are giving up 167.6. Both teams had the same score last week. Both games were decided by a game-ending field goal, but both had very different feels. The Bengals got housed at first in what looked like a winnable matchup, yet gamely fought back to tie, only to see their defense wilt under pressure in a late drive and suffer a walk-off loss. The Ravens, on the other hand, battled their divisional nemesis Steelers and won a thriller in OT on a walk-off field goal winner themselves. Now, while the Ravens are far from world beaters, they have more weapons at their disposal and ways to use them than the rudderless Bengals. Now, if they had trouble containing rookie Kyler Murray at home, what do you think that Lamar Jackson will do to them on the road? Hide the children from this one. It will get ugly. Baltimore is my lock of the week. Now let's turn to the late games. Our first game is the 4-0 49ers at the 3-2 Rams. Game being played at Memorial Coliseum in Los Angeles. 4:05 kickoff on Fox. The Rams are 3.5-point favorites. Last week, the 49ers defeated the Browns 31-3, while the Rams lost to the Seahawks 30-29. Fast fact, the Rams have given up 85 points in their last 2 games, both of them losses, after only giving up 49 in their first 3. All of those were wins. Now, the Niners made it look way too easy in decimating the Browns on Monday night, while the Rams lost a tough one on the road in Seattle. Are the Niners for real? Are the Rams that bad on defense now? Though I'm not entirely sold on the Niners being a top-notch team, and I'm not sold on the Rams defense being that bad. But having given up a bushel of points in the last 2 weeks, they are starting to look a bit suspect. This is more of a coin toss game than you may want to admit. The Niners are sneaky good, even though 3 of their 4 wins have been against AFC North teams. But I can't see the Rams losing 3 straight. If they do, they might be out of the playoff picture before Halloween. The pick here is the Los Angeles Rams. Next up, we have the 1-4 Falcons at the 1-3-1 Cardinals. Game being played at State Farm Stadium in Glendale, Arizona. 4:05 kickoff on Fox. The Cards are 2-point favorites. Last week, the Falcons lost to the Texans 53-32, while the Cardinals defeated the Bengals 26-23. Fast fact, Falcons quarterback Matt Ryan has thrown for over 300 yards in every game this season. The Falcons are falling apart fast, and Dan Quinn's seat is getting hotter by the second. They got lit up by the Texans last week, a team that only eked out 10 points the week previous. Now they head to the desert to face the Cards, who were cheered by a late win over the hopeless Bengals. I feel bad for Matty Ice and Julio Jones, 2 quality players stuck on a sinking team. Now they have to try to pound out more points than their porous defense is giving up. I don't trust either team, but I think that the improving Kyler Murray helps the home team eke out a win. The pick here is Arizona. Next up, we have the 2-3 Titans at the 1-4 Broncos. Game being played at Empower Field at Mile High in Denver, 4:25 on CBS. The Broncos are 2.5-point favorites. Last week, the Titans lost to the Bills 14-7, while the Broncos defeated the Chargers 20-13. Fast fact, after nearly giving up 300 rushing yards to the Jags 2 weeks ago, the Broncos allow a paltry 38 to the Chargers in LA. Now, the Titans found every which way to lose and did so in a winnable game at home against the Bills. Now they head to the mountains to face the quixotic Broncos team that could get out of its way the first 4 weeks, only to head to LA and stun the Chargers. Now, I don't trust Joe Flacco, but the Broncos' running game should be able to wear down the Titans' often suspect defense. The Broncos losing 3 straight at home is unfathomable, so I'll hope the Broncos don't prove me wrong. The pick here is Denver. Next up, we have the 3-2 Cowboys at the 0-4 Jets. Game being played at MetLife Stadium in East Rutherford, New Jersey. 4:25 kickoff on CBS. The Cowboys are 9-point favorites. Last week, Cowboys lost to the Packers 34-24. The Jets lost to the Eagles 31-6. Fast fact, the Jets still have more defensive touchdowns than offensive touchdowns this season. It's 2-1. Now, the Pokes got trampled by the Pack, and suddenly the yips for Jason Garrett's scalp get louder. Though Jerry Jones is ignoring them, now they get a reprieve and head to Gotham where the Jets' putrid offense awaits. The Pokes should have no real problem here, and the Yowls will lessen for this week. I'll keep it short and sweet because the pick here is Dallas. Sunday night game is the 1-4 Steelers at the 2-3 Chargers. Game being played at Dignity Health Sports Park in Carson, California. 8:20 kickoff on NBC. The Chargers are 7-point favorites. Last week, the Steelers lost to the Ravens 26-23 in overtime, while the Chargers lost to the Broncos 20-13. Fast fact, the Chargers have only 12 sacks on the year. Now, the Steelers lost an overtime thriller and lost Mason Rudolph to a frightening hit. So now they are down to their 3rd quarterback, one Devlin Hodges. Who is that cat that say? I have no idea. Devlin Hodges, Say his name right and say. Okay. The Steelers are down to their 3rd quarterback, Devlin Hodges. He may get the start if Rudolph does not pass concussion protocol. Facing a Chargers squad that took a puzzling loss to the Broncos last week, this will not be pretty. The pick here is the Los Angeles Chargers. Finally, the Monday night game is the 2-1 Lions against the 3-1 Packers. Game being played at Lambeau Field in Green Bay, 8:15 kickoff on ESPN. The Packers are 4.5-point favorites. Last week, the Lions were on their bye, and the Packers defeated the Cowboys 34-24. Fast fact, this surprised me. The Lions have won the last 4 meetings, but Aaron Rodgers only played in one of those last 4. Now, the Lions are a quiet surprise at 2-1-1, and now face the Packers, who bounced back from their first loss to throttle the Pokes. Now, I still don't trust the Packers offense, even with Aaron Jones suddenly becoming the Pack's go-to back. That said, the Lions are not that frightening. And the Pack at home, oh, wait a minute, didn't I say that at their last home game? They lost to the Eagles in Lambeau, I say. The Packers did lose at home to the Eagles in a winnable night game in Lambeau. Now, I'm calling this an upset only because the Pack have lost their last 4 to the Lions and are coming off a really puzzling home loss. The pick here is Green Bay as my upset of the week. And there you have it. Last week, I was 9-6, but my lock and upset were both correct. Thank you very much. And overall, I'm 47-30-1. 5-0 on the locks, 2-3 on the upsets. We will take another timeout. Come back with the Hoodwood Hot 5, which includes the Hoodwood Top 10, and some more thoughts on college football, along with Phat Dap Head Slap, and the final word from the Wood. Sports from the Hoodwood heads down the home stretch after this.
You're tuned in to Sports from the Hoodwood, the internet's foremost location for the most honest insight, thorough analysis, and unfiltered opinions from the world of sports. Now, once again, here's the man of the hour, After Hours, your host, AJ Green.
Rounding third, and you're from Hoodwood, Hoodwood Hot 5, Hoodwood Top 10 of the week, and the final word from the Wood. Now let's start off the Hoodwood Hot 5. We say 5 hot topics. That's 3 hot topics, the game of the week, and the top 10. First topic we'll discuss is already a 2-man race for the Heisman. It seems like everyone is talking about Jalen Hurts of Oklahoma or Tua Tagovailoa of the Crimson Tide. But hey, wait a minute. There are other good players out there. Sleeping on Joe Burrow from LSU, you do at your own risk. Sleeping on Justin Fields, a brilliant quarterback from Ohio State, is lethal. And then you have Jonathan Taylor, the sledgehammer running back for Wisconsin. A running back that just absolutely wore down Michigan last week. Let's just say 2 weeks ago. We're not even going to mention what he did to Kent State. Another shutout for Wisconsin. That's 3 shutouts on the season. Good grief. Now, how would you like to watch? Now, I read this. I stumbled across this today, and it just made me laugh. How would you like to watch the Michigan-Notre Dame game? Of course, a lot of people want to watch that. I can't stand Notre Dame, but I would love to see that those 2 teams, those historic teams, play each other. How would you like to see this game in a blimp? I kid you not, in a blimp. It's part of an Airbnb, literally, where you'll be staying in a blimp above Michigan Stadium before the Michigan Notre Dame game next week. I should say on the 26th. I take that back. On the 26th. The Airbnb is $150 a night. That's cheaper than the hotel that I'm staying at here soon. Like, are you kidding me? A blimp above the stadium for the game. The atmosphere would be just so crazy there. Be great seats too, looking right down on the stadium too. I wonder how high up they're gonna be for that game. I'm a little afraid of heights, but that'd be cool to look at. Will the Tide ever get tested? I'm not talking about tested for any kind of diseases or anything. Come on, get real. The Tide have not been tested. The number 1 team in the country have more or less yawned their way through a number of games. They destroyed Duke on national TV. They destroyed New Mexico State, South Carolina, Southern Miss, Ole Miss. They've had one road game at South Carolina where they decimated the Gamecocks. Tua Tagovailoa is brilliant, but they haven't played a full game. Now that's going to change. They've got Texas A&M next week. Next week. They have Texas A&M this coming Saturday in College Station. That will be a pretty good test. But the Tide, they've thrown basically, they'll have 4 true road games the whole season. This one here in College Station. They played one in Columbia against the South Carolina Gamecocks. They go to Starkville in November to play Mississippi State. Their senior day sandwich in between that against a cookie team. And then they play at Auburn in Jordan-Hare for the Iron Bowl. Will the Tide ever get tested? I don't see the Tide getting tested until they play LSU. And they've got LSU at home. Somebody, please put it on Alabama just once. I want to see Nick Saban grimace like he did against Clemson back in January. Game of the week, as much as you would like it to be the noon kickoff between legendary eternal rivals Texas and Oklahoma, which I consider a great atmosphere. Games being played in Dallas at the old Cotton Bowl. Can't get more historic than that. And the centerpiece of the Texas State Fair. I am bound and determined to get down to Dallas again to go to the Texas State Fair for another Texas-Oklahoma game. You cannot beat that atmosphere. But it's not the game of the week. The best game of the week is the night game. 8 p.m. ESPN. Number 7 Florida heads to the Bayou to face number 5 LSU. There are fewer, scarier places in this nation than Tiger Stadium at night. Saturday night in Baton Rouge, you cannot beat the atmosphere when the announcer says it's Saturday night in Baton Rouge and time for LSU football. That is one of the most electric scenes you will see in any college venue. Death Valley is a rep for being one of the most scariest and intimidating atmospheres in college football. And Florida is no joke. They know what it's like to play in front of a hostile crowd. The gravity of a mid-October game with 2 teams in the top 10, with basically an elimination game, winner stays in the national championship hunt, loser might as well just go ahead and pack it in. Now you get why it's the game of the week. Let's take a look at the Hoodwood top 10. We will go from 10 to 1. There's a new 10 in the Hoodwood top 10. Penn State last week, they were not ranked. They defeated Purdue 35-7. Their next game is in Iowa City at Iowa. If they win that game, I can see them moving up. Next up, number 9 is Texas, who was last week 10. They defeated West Virginia 42-31. Their next game is against Oklahoma, as I just mentioned. At number 8, we have Wisconsin, who stays at number 8. They defeated Kent State 48-0. Their next game is against Michigan State. At number 7, we have Florida. They were 9 last week. They defeated Auburn 24-13. Their next game is at LSU. At number 6, we have Oklahoma, who defeated Kansas 45-20. Their next game is against Texas. At number 5, we have LSU, who defeated Utah State 42-6. They host Florida in Death Valley next week. At number 4, we have Georgia, who drops down from number 3. They defeated Tennessee 43-14. Their next game is against South Carolina. At number 3, up from number 4, is Ohio State. They defeated Michigan State 34-10. They are on their bye this coming Saturday. And then last week, we have Clemson number 2. They were on a bye. Their next game is against Florida State at home. And the number 1 team in the Hoodwood Hot 10. In the Hoodwood Top 10, the number 1 team is Alabama, who were on a bye Their next game is at College Station against Texas A&M. Let's quickly move into the Phat Dap and Head Slap. The Phat Dap of the week goes to Penn State head coach James Franklin, who was articulate and eloquently defended one of his own players because he wears dreads. Seriously, folks, someone wearing dreads is not a new thing. Jonathan Sutherland, a safety for the Nittany Lions, was a target of a supposed alum who was critical of his shoulder-length dreads. Franklin went on the offensive, defending his player as a good student and a team leader, and someone he said if his daughters brought home someone like Sutherland, he'd be proud to have them date him. Now that's saying something. Being a father of 2 girls, you're very, very careful about who you want your daughters to date. If a guy has that much character where he wouldn't mind his daughters dating him, that's saying something. Now, Sutherland, for his part, said he harbored no ill will to the letter writer, who I will not give publicity to here. And it was a real person. I thought it was a fake person, but if somebody owned up to saying what he said. The letter writer, who took a sideways shot at players from Florida State and Miami in a later interview, said he just longs for the good old days where players were clean cut and didn't wear tattoos. Basically what he's saying is those scary Negroes should be clean cut. Who says because you wear dreads you're not clean cut and not a scholar? Phat Dap to James Franklin for defending his player in a classy, articulate way. Now the head slap kind of goes into my final word. The head slap goes to Trump for taking Twitter to blast both Greg Popovich and Steve Kerr for not speaking out about the China-Hong Kong controversy. Now this leads to my final word from the wood. Now, it's very well known that I'm not a Trump fan. To be perfectly honest, I despise the man. What annoys me is what he has said about Steve Kerr and Greg Popovich, two of the NBA's finest and most respected coaches on and off the court. Now, I rail about the Spurs, and I call them boring, and I call Pop grumpy and grumbly. But to be honest, he's a very articulate and well-spoken individual and someone who has been very outspoken in his criticism of Trump. Now, that in itself is the sole reason I like Pop. I think he makes thoughtful and well-researched points. He's a nuanced guy, a Renaissance man, if you will, who has built a dynasty in San Antonio over the last 20 some odd years. Now, Pop isn't one of these brain hacks. He says things in a thoughtful, concise way. And usually, he doesn't say that much at all. But he's one of those, when he says something, you pay attention to it. Steve Kerr is another person I've always admired. Son of an educator. The man was born in Beirut, for crying out loud. His father, who was a professor at the American University in Lebanon, was gunned down in 1984 when Kerr was in college at Arizona. Now, Kerr is another well-spoken and very educated individual. He's been someone who's been articulate and very vociferous in his criticism of the president. Now, when asked about the scenario in China and the controversy behind Daryl Morey saying that he stood with Hong Kong, and China then subsequently more or less ejecting all the basketball players from China and ending its partnership with the Houston Rockets, when the question was asked to Steve Kerr, he deflected, saying he needed more time to research the information. Trump jumped on it, saying that Kerr was a quote-unquote scared little boy when asked about it. Kerr is far from a little boy. He's 57 years old, and he's far from scared. Someone who was raised in Beirut with the specter of terrorism always in the forefront, and having lost his father to terrorism, he's a scared little boy? I seriously would not call Kerr that. Now, Trump's criticism of Pop is also bizarre, Papa's an Air Force vet, something that Trump never was. And he has more wiles about it and about the world than Trump could ever muster. And he's only a basketball coach. The fact is that Trump, as usual, is out of line, speaking about things he knows nothing about and making an absolute doddering fool of himself. It is wrong for him to be throwing brickbats at sports figures when there are more important things to be handled in the nation's politics. And that is the final word from the woods. With the music coming up in the background, you know that means your time in the woods is just about done, and I thank you again for your visit. The email for the show is kjgreen@blackbanditproductions.com. Send me emails on show topics, questions, comments, and criticism. I welcome your correspondence and try to respond to every email. You can get this podcast on a number of sites, including iTunes and Google Play. The show site itself is hoodwoodsports.podbean.com, which has the back catalog of previous shows. I'm also on Facebook, Black Bandit Productions and Enterprises. I'm also on Twitter as well, KJGreen20 and KJGreenBB, as well as audio versions welcome here on YouTube. So, that's that, fellow sports fans. Until next time out in the Hoodwood, I'm KJ Green, 30.
Sports from the Hoodwood
Is a Black Bandit Productions and Enterprises presentation.
of a 551 Audio and Films production.